Hey y'all, hope you're doing well today. So in today's message, I want to have a discussion about pain and denial. And pain is something that you can kind of view as a crossroads in life. Okay, it's a point that we come to when we experience pain, where there's a choice to be made. And this is where you have to really call up all the strength that you have inside of you to make the right decision. And so what we learn is that denial, someone who doesn't want to face pain, denial usually ends up being the result when a person wants to just kind of gloss over or brush over pain, or find a quick solution, to just fool themselves into thinking that it's taken care of, but deep down on some level in their psyche they know it's not really resolved. So there's just layers and layers of denial. It's a very complex topic, and I feel like it's really deserving of many videos, and I'm sure there's a lot. If you want to take a deep dive, I'm sure there's a lot of different videos on YouTube about it, and probably books and academic research papers and everything else on it. But essentially, there's a crossroads at a point of pain in one's life, and the choices are denial and acceptance. And denial, we know, is rooted in falsehood. It's rooted in deception. It's about choosing lies, essentially, right? Lying to oneself. That's really what it means to deny, to live in denial, right? And then acceptance, on the other hand, is rooted in truth, but it requires strength and resilience, right? Dedication, effort, a lot of effort sometimes. And it's funny because denial may feel like, if a person chooses to deny their pain, let me just back up and say this. There's many different routes one can take to deny pain, but I feel like most often it manifests in dysfunction. I feel like largely unconscious dysfunction, and also in coping through coping mechanisms and addictions and things like that, right? It's like a life on the run from the pain. That's what a life of denial is in relation to pain, at least. But so in the end, in the effort to not put forth the effort to accept the pain and process it and everything, in the end, denial actually requires more effort. So it's tricky like that, see. So I feel like denial, because it is in its own essence deceptive, it looks like the easy route, but it winds up being the harder route, see. It's like a wolf in sheep's clothing in itself. It has to come from the dark side. If you're a spiritual person and you believe in another realm, an invisible realm, and outside influence, spiritual influence, then I'm sure you would see why I at least have the perspective that denial comes from the dark side, right? So I want to talk to you today about the essence of heaven and the essence of hell, right? Conceptually. So if I had to just quickly define or summarize the essence of heaven, I would say peace, comfort, and joy. And I would call the essence of hell pain and torture, right? If we reframe heaven and hell from literal to internal constructs, internal perceptions, right, or states of being, rather, they become workable that way, okay? And again, I'm not denying the literal, if that's part of your belief system, because to me, really, truth is, from my perspective, it seems layered or fractal. In other words, it's true in every everywhere you look. In other words, it's like, there it is. It's just it's kind of like this pattern of truth that you can just take a portion of it and you're still going to see that same pattern. You're going to see that same truth reflected, no matter what angle or what piece you look at. So whether you view heaven and hell as literal or or just metaphorical. You know, I think it's true both ways. This is just my perception. I just invite you to consider that. But it's fractal in that way, I feel like, truth. But you know, if we are a neutral being having a human experience, okay, then it stands to reason that if our goal is peace and joy, then the opposite of peace and joy would be a barrier to it, right? You know, it's said in the Bible that the devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy. So it makes sense to me that some people will never be able to share in joy and peace with us if they are in pain, okay? And you'll know it. You'll know if a person's in pain, even if they're living in denial of it, because there will be this atmosphere or like cloud of negativity just in their presence. You know, despite, you know, the mask, despite the smile, it's like you can see the pain in the eyes, or you can just feel, you know, that energy of negativity, of there's like a conflict. It's like you can almost sense the denial, the energy of the denial itself in a person, where something seems off, you know, but you can't pinpoint it and put your finger on it. It's kind of like that, right? And it's sad, but as long as a person is committed, even unconsciously, to pain, it's kind of like denying it. What is it? What's that old saying? You know, whatever you deny, actually you amplify, you make it stronger. It's kind of like that. It's like it works against you. It's a trickster in that manner, you know? And that's the whole essence of deception, you know? So you know that these are tools from the devil. You know that these are tools from the dark side. And they're traps. And so that's why I like talking about this stuff on my channel. I don't really like it, but I feel like it's important that we do it, so that we can avoid these traps. You know, they're set before all of us in almost every aspect of our lives, it seems like sometimes, you know, on the small scale and the grander scale, the micro and the macro. It's just there. It's traps everywhere. But we, you know, as we mature, I think we learn to look a little bit deeper, and we kind of we hold back before we go down a path. You know, we're just really careful. We tread lightly, we step carefully, and you know, traps are a little bit harder to get into when you operate that way. You know, that's, to me, just a much wiser way to operate in this world. Just to practice the pause, as they say. I've got my bracelet on today, you know, of my little angel wing with the pause symbol that a good friend made for me. And so it's just a great reminder. But it's true. There's some people that, you know, they can try to present themselves as happy-go-lucky or just a positive person or whatever, but there's always this energy that just feels, it bothers your spirit. It irritates your spirit when you're in their presence, you know, like I said, like a cloud of negativity. So, you know, pain can be denied as a defense mechanism. You might call it denial a defense mechanism, right? It's the psyche's attempt trying to avoid pain, right? But in doing so, here's the catch, here's the trap right here. In doing so, it self-sabotages the psyche, right? It's now like working against itself, because now the person instead of feeling pain is sabotaging peace and joy still, because there's a price to pay for denial. And the price to pay for denial is a coping mechanism. This is how you can identify denial in a person, okay? Denial of something, right? Or maybe even many things. Addictions. And just dysfunctional behavior. Dysfunctional behavior, that's deserving of its own video in itself, right? But dysfunctional behavior is basically, I feel like, if I had to summarize it in my own, you know, through my perspective, I would just say behavior that is not producing good fruit, if you just want to put it simply, right? And the problem with addictions and dysfunctions that that come about as a coping mechanism for someone living in denial. The really big problem about these things is that now it's not only the one person that's affected, the person that has chosen to run from pain, the person that is choosing a life of denying pain that they're not wanting to deal with. Now the issue is that through addictions and dysfunctions, they're not the only one affected. Now their families are affected. Their spouses, their spouse, I'm thinking of like different people, multiple people, but their spouse is affected, their family is affected, their friends are affected, their workplace is affected. It's that negative cloud they carry with them. There was like a character, I think, in Peanuts, you know, that little cartoon, you know, that had this cloud of dirt or dust or something around them. It's kind of like that, you know? And so it's true. And when you are the kind of person that wants to wear rose-colored glasses, you know, well, sometimes we have to learn a hard lesson around these kind of people. We want to believe what they present. Their mask of denial, we want to buy into that so bad, right? Because we want to share. We want to share our joy. We want to share, you know, goodness and a good perspective and outlook and peace and everything with people. Why? Because of love. Love is, you know, love motivates us to want to share those good things, right? So there's certainly motivation for us to want to wear those rose-colored glasses, but you have to, you know, as you mature, you learn that those are all good things, and we don't want to give up on them. That's important, because that's a trap too from the dark side. We don't want to give up on those things, but we need to reserve them back as our pearls and learn who to share them with, right? Who's even capable of sharing those things with us. So, but yes, when a person's engaged in any kind of addiction, it doesn't have to just be, you know, drugs or alcohol. The most, you know, what's I feel like commonly brought to mind when you hear that word addiction, it can be a shopping or spending addiction. You know, the whole family's bank accounts are getting drained. That matters. Or it could be an addiction to the internet, where, you know, the kids or even the spouse would really like some attention and, you know, just some quality time together, but the person's always on their phone, you know, or, you know, just, you know, making excuses to go to the bathroom, but they're, you know, sitting in there on their phone, or they're on the computer, or whatever it is, you know. And it's hard, because it's like these people, from my experience, someone who has an addiction like that, they know it. They know they do. And it's not something they're actually willing to relinquish for the relationship. But they're not totally upfront with you. That's the issue, see. That's the dysfunctional part, is that they're not totally, because if they sat down and they were like, hey, look, I have this addiction, and, you know, I'm going to spend, you know, 65-70% of my time, you know, on that addiction. I'm going to be making excuses to you to leave the room and go sit over here on the computer and do whatever I do. You know, and then when you come in the room, I'm going to shut down or minimize the window real quick so you don't see what I'm doing, and I'm going to, you know, lie to you and gaslight you and tell you you didn't see me just do that. You know, if people were totally upfront with you about this kind of stuff, their dysfunction, their addictions, you know, you wouldn't go into the relationship. So, you know, it's hard, and you know, you can start to see these signs. This is where we're going to talk about that. You learn to start trusting what you see more than what you hear, right? So even though there are red flags, and you can finally, in hindsight, identify that you kind of ignored them, you denied them to yourself, don't totally blame yourself, because engaging in, well, really don't blame yourself at all. I mean, just learn from it. You know what I mean? Because convicting yourself over something like that is not going to serve you well. You know, there's so much truth in the Bible, and it talks about, you know, a tree that produces good fruit, and that's what we should be striving for, to live that way ourselves, you know, through our life, as well as what we're looking for in, you know, another person, for a friendship or, you know, a relationship, whatever it is. It's true. And so, you know, it's not fruitful to condemn yourself. So, you know, but it is fruitful to learn from our mistakes, right? But we're going to be talking about that, about trusting our eyes more than our ears too, right? But it's sad because there's so many people affected when a person is running from pain or running from something or living a double life or, enmeshed in addiction and or dysfunction in some way. A lot of people suffer. And then, see, it spreads like the plague because because then the people that are affected by that, now they're hurt deeply and they don't want to deal with their pain sometimes, and then they're now living in denial. And sometimes these people are labeled, if there's the central person that's been identified as, one of the terms nowadays is narcissistic, but it could be a wolf in sheep's clothing, or whatever label you want to use, right? Someone that's living a lie, however you want to identify that. The people that they've hurt now, you can see this person's living a lie, and you're like, I know good and well these people over here, after so many years, have to know this. They have to know this person's living a lie. Well, they may also be living in denial. So it spreads in that way. And there's labels and terms for these kind of people, like enablers and stuff like that. Just for my own processing and learning, I try to stay away from labels because I have found, and I'm not saying it's bad if you use labels, I think they're important, really, especially in the early stages of getting a grip mentally on these things, these concepts. But I feel like as you grow in gaining deeper understanding in these concepts, I like to go beyond the labels because they can also be restrictive, mentally. And so I just prefer that expansive type of thinking. But all this spreads, pain spreads, and denial can spread, like a curse, literally. So there's something big to be said about this phenomenon, you might say, or whatever this is that happens. But if you think about it, pain, you might even say, might possibly be the devil's number one tool or doorway, right? And yet Jesus told us to bear our cross. What does this mean? It means to me that the only way out of pain is through it. The only way out is through. I'm sure you've heard that phrase. It's very common. We must acknowledge and furthermore feel our pain, and thirdly, process it. So it's like 3 steps. Acknowledge it, right? Right off the bat, you're not denying at that point, right? Acknowledge it, feel it, and process it, okay? It's like a 3-step process. Because you can't relinquish pain. You can't lose it or relinquish it if it isn't first accepted. Okay, so you have to accept it first before you can let it go. And I think you have to feel it and process it too. But, you have to let that pain go before you can find the next thing, or then enter the next stage of your life, right? Or to reestablish that state of flow, that life force energy, to allow it to create more in your life, right? Or to bless you. So it's like a snowball effect in that manner. You see what I'm saying? Acceptance is the first step, and there are people who are just they're not even willing to take that first step. They're going to run from pain, and it's kind of like, I feel like spiritually and to our hearts, energetically, however you want to say it, approaching something very painful that happened to you, or it maybe even happened over long term, it can feel like if you allow yourself to feel it, it will totally destroy you. It can feel like if you dip your toe in that river, you're just going to fall right in, and that's going to be the end of you. I know it can feel that overwhelming. So there is motivation to want to turn from it and deny it and run from it. I get it. But in the end, if you're wanting to avoid self-destruction, then it's deceptive in that manner. Denial is deceptive in that manner, because what winds up happening is denial winds up actually being the destructive force. See? So, it takes wisdom, it takes understanding, it takes perseverance and resilience and strength. It takes that to make the right choice and to go forward, move forward with the right choice, okay? You know, other cultures, if you think back throughout history, what we know of them, I feel like through their rituals and their, you know, traditions, they seem to promote a healthy approach to pain, right? Just as a quick example, the shamanic practices, you know, meant to heal people. They were very extreme, but it forced people to not slip into a state of denial. It was like, let me just personify pain and just exemplify that through, you know, costume and, you know, a loud volume and just elaborate, like, shocking techniques or whatever, a performance. However, you know, they would go through their shamanic, they would present the shamanic experience to the client. It would, in other words, it would put it in their face to the degree that they can't deny it, see? So there's so many different routes that, you know, our ancient ancestors, they would take to help a person face hard things and accept them and process them even, right? And it's kind of like bordering on, you know, I feel like the spirit of death. But see, that's just it. We feel it like it's going to literally kill us, but really what it kills is our ego. It's a purification process. It's a refinement process. See? So it's like a little hidden gift if we're strong enough to open that door carefully, you know? But today, you know, we look back on those kind of practices and we label them like barbaric and crazy. And yet, you know, it's you have to question, you know, are we really better off nowadays, you know? And maybe I'm not trying to generalize and say all, you know, past cultures have done the right thing with regards to their, you know, traditions or whatever, but maybe they didn't always handle everything exactly right, but I can appreciate, you know, at least the effort of anyone who tries, you know, a technique to do the right thing and to be strong enough to accept hard things, you know, to preserve their own mind and heart and soul and spirit, and also to not affect or to pass on the pain to other people, you know. But today, I feel like as a collective, this is just me, it sort of seems like we have shifted into denial altogether, like on the grander scale. It's kind of like, if you look at the collective, right, people's attitudes, there's so much that's just dismissed and you know, laughed off, and you know, you can even, if you observe, you can see a lot of people that engage in self-gaslighting. It's lying to themselves. It's denial, just manifest in all these different ways. But you know, it's again, I'm going to remind you all of this topic we talked about recently, which is the spectrum of extremes. You know, it's kind of like when you think about suffering, denial seems to produce this spectrum of extremes. And on one end you have ego-driven unwillingness to suffer at all, which is denial, right? And then on the other end you have also ego-driven victimhood, which is, we can all be victims, but I'm talking about someone who's going to live in this state forever and ever and ever. And that would be ego-driven because it would be exploiting suffering, right? But it's kind of like in our attempts, or in anyone's attempt to unconsciously or consciously seek a quick fix. And look, think about that for a second. Let's just pause before I move forward. Think about the immediacy of our modern era, right? The desire for quick fixes, the desire for just quickness altogether, right? Microwaves, 1-minute videos, how popular those are across different platforms. We even have computers in our cars that'll read us a text message right when it comes in, it's almost like we're just spoiled rotten, is what we say down here in the South. But it's essentially, we've normalized this stuff. We've normalized not suffering at all, ever, for a moment. And we're suffering for it, for not wanting to suffer or endure just even a little bit of being uncomfortable. It's influencing us. It's affecting us. So, yeah. Anytime we are in a state of not wanting to endure, okay, it's creating a blockage. We don't realize it, but it's creating a blockage. It's like wanting that end goal of resolution so bad that we take the route of immediacy, you might say. I don't know if that's a word. What happens is it halts that life force energy. It halts that movement of creation in our life, right? There's no life happening. The only moment we really ever have is the current moment, right? And there has to be this flow state that we are engaged in. And in order for that to even be a thing, to be healthy and to be happening, there has to be acceptance. Every moment there has to be a letting go process. Every single moment for this, this life flow to be happening, right? For creation of the new, moment by moment. It's a beautiful thing, but you have to be strong to ride those waves as they come. Because when you have pain pop up, which is just inevitable as part of this human experience, we have this choice to latch on to it, right? Or to let it go. But you can't let it go without first having something to let go of. You see what I'm saying? So letting it go is not denial. Denial is like it comes to you and you're like, no, I don't see it. I don't see it. And it's like this blinder you put up, I'm thinking of like the horses that wear the, it's like, I don't see it. Well, now there's this pressure buildup, see? And now you got to deal with this pressure that's building up. So now you got to, supplement with addictions or whatever it is. It just creates this, it's so dysfunctional. It winds up being way worse than if you just felt it in the moment and dealt with it and then, let it go, right? So, it's weird. It's like this weird cycle of continual consequence that just builds and builds and builds, and I feel like, if a person engages in that denial and there's this building up happening where there's really no life happening, that flow state has been blocked. I don't know that a person's always conscious of that, but what they do feel is they feel something. They feel this restlessness. I want you to think about this. Think about when there's no movement in your body. If you sit on a long car ride or a plane ride, or you're just stagnant, your body's physically stagnant for a long time. When you have you ever noticed how you start feeling this like a restless leg type thing, where you feel this energy inside of you like bursting? It's like it wants to come out, like it's just urging you to get up and move, right? It's a horrible feeling. And the more you deny it, the worse it gets. It's kind of like that, right? So again, truth, it's fractal on different, or through different lenses and different parts of our reality. Truth is truth is truth. So, many people who pause and self-reflect are not as affected by this stuff that we're talking about today because they're not participating in the hive mentality. People who are already questioning things, people who are already observing, you're not going to be as affected, but I would say you're still going to be somewhat affected because even our friends and family, are often caught up in this kind of stuff, these traps. And the really sad part of this, and this in itself can be a trap, it can create pain within you. And that is to sit back and watch someone else self-destruct because they've chosen denial. That's hard. I'm reminded in the Bible where, we're told, Jesus is talking about being able to walk away, even from your own, it says that, the wheat and the tares, when they're divided, it's going to, that division's going to separate, spouses and parent and child and siblings and your closest people, right? So that's what happens with truth and deception. It divides. Truth is a double-edged sword. So, yes. Another thing you can observe, and I had written a whole lot on this that was very specific, and I thought I better not get into that. But I bet you can, if you think about it, you can kind of see this just, through your own eyes, through your own life experience. But, there's a lot of people have this tendency to apply immediate actions which they feel like are resolutions when something would have resolved naturally with a little patience and effort. And I bet if you've ever seen this dynamic go down, you've ever witnessed this enough, at some point you may have also witnessed the bad result of acting fast on something. I'll just leave it at that. But some people are so entrenched in their own delusions that if you share a true story about an issue, I put with any industry, but you can probably expand this into, to mean different things. Where anything, my point is, if you share an issue that you have experienced personally, where the error or the exploitation is so obvious that it would even win a court case, some people are so in denial and emotionally invested in their stance. They're so close-minded, and I feel like there's motivation to be close-minded because, again, people get emotionally invested in their stance. People can't always accept your true story or someone else's true story, because they will take that one example and blow it up and generalize and what you're saying and twist it to mean like an absolute statement, and that's kind of like putting words in your mouth so that they can defend their truths. It's like fighting for their right to continue the path of reactivity as a resolution. So, in other words, there's some people who won't give true resolution a chance that would be lasting and healthy because they're just so entrenched in this spirit of immediacy, just this restlessness that it's such a strong sense of denial that it's like they have to snuff out, any problem just right away and not see it so that, they don't have to suffer at all. Really, or what you might say from the healthy perspective, endure at all. But then they don't want to see the consequences either. Even if the consequences arise, they don't even want to see that either. They're just so in denial. But here's the thing. The truth doesn't need to be defended. It doesn't. Right actions don't need to be defended. Your life can be a living example of the truth, and people will hate you for it. They will hate you for it because you are now a mirror to the lies that they have bought into and that they are defending, literally with their life. So this is why spoken truth, spoken truth, as far as I go, can camp out happily in my treasure chest. Okay? Let me share this quote that I found today, actually, this morning. It's pretty cool. It says, you cannot talk, notice talk, you cannot talk butterfly language with caterpillar people. It sounds very arrogant, doesn't it? but living the truth, okay? Caterpillars see the butterfly anyway. They see it, right? So in real life, if you apply this as metaphor to people, the cocooning process is an option. It's an option. But it takes time and effort, see. So, a humble person could admit where they started out. I can look back on when I was much younger. It's, it does boost the ego, even though you may not realize you're coming from the stance of ego or feeding your ego, but it can feel good to feel passionate about, your certain stance, your stance on certain things. But life can and will humble you and give you wisdom through perspective. So, but the thing is, some people will never gain perspective because they actively reject it. It'll even happen to them, but they'll still reject it. So rejection of reality creates a life of denial and therefore suffering. So, and there's nothing we can do about that. Everybody has a choice, right? So, what holds us up when we are involved with a person who is living in denial? What can hold us up and keep us from exiting that friendship, relationship, or whatever it is when we are told that they are willing to see our perspectives and they're willing to learn and grow, right? They're willing to consider our perspectives or whatever, right? They tell us this, right? It's how they portray themselves. But if we're too focused on their words, it's like their language is deceptive, right? Language can be deceptive. And it actually obstructs our ability to see. We're so focused on this sense that it cuts this one off. And so what winds up happening is we get, roped into this spirit of denial. See how the darkness spreads that way? And so what's interesting is, you can look this up too, people who genuinely have one of their senses handicapped in some way, like someone who's blind, it has been proven that their other senses are strengthened. So we can learn from this truth, okay, and we can apply it in our own lives intentionally and benefit from it. And here's how. We can train ourselves to observe. We can sharpen this, right? What can't be denied, right? What you see, what you witness firsthand. We can train ourselves to strengthen our observation skills by starting to silence our own self. In other words, we're just kind of holding back. We're reserving our words, right? And in so doing, just taking a slow and easy approach. In so doing, it's kind of like we also are, on some other level, we're lowering the importance of the spoken word, both given and received, so that we are strengthening what we see with our own eyes. Do you see what I'm saying? It's an intentional tactic that we can take up. So when we realize the person's actions, if any, are either totally out of alignment with their words, well, I said either, but then I'd scratched out the next part. So in other words, if we realize their actions don't match their words, then we know that this transformation or any kind of growth at all just hasn't happened, right? We eventually find out who they really are. But sometimes it may take decades if we're, caught up in that denial ourselves, because we've been brainwashed to listen and trust, their deceptive language. But it may take a long time to realize the depth and the scope of their denial, okay? So in the end, self-reflection and a desire to learn and grow, coupled with radical acceptance, moment by moment, that's the path to peace, right? Because pain is limiting if it's avoided, because all the efforts to avoid it creates walls or obstructions, right? Acceptance, you might reframe that as the faith walk. It creates a path of possibility. It's like, with God, everything is possible. It's just like acceptance removes limits, right? It makes your life limitless. Miracles can happen then, because you're out of that negative vibrational state now, okay? But it does require strength. And it is heartbreaking to accept that pain will keep some people prisoners even up to their death. But if we don't work on accepting their choice to continue in actions that perpetuate and spread that pain onto others, we will become the devil's apologists. The best thing we can do is to educate others, spread the word, spread the awareness, help other people to, see the truth and to see the traps and the pitfalls with regards to avoiding processing hard things. Jesus said to bear our cross. So feeling and processing our pain takes time and effort, but it gets us with wisdom. And it truly is the honorable way of living, the true and honorable way. And furthermore, it doesn't spread pain to others. We're taking it on ourselves. We're doing the work ourselves. You might think of it like drawing the line and holding it with integrity and saying, it stops with me. So I hope this has been encouraging. I hope that it got the wheels turning for you. Most of all, I hope you got something of value from it. I thank you so much for coming along to hear the message, and I hope that you have a beautiful day. I'll see you again very soon.